Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. So for this video, I have been getting a lot of questions and a lot of requests for separate videos about small topics in Genshin. Now, instead of making an individual video for each single one of them, since they are pretty short, I thought of compiling all of your recommendations and suggestions into one big video, along with a few other tips that I have thought of myself. So the reason I created this video is for any late game players or new players who are looking for something to do or have their questions answered about some mechanics in the game. I'll be going over a lot of different tips, so if you want to check them out, I have timestamps in the description for a specific kind of tip. So let's get started right away with tip number 1. Algorithmic Mechanic is a coding class for people ages 5 to 17 years old. The game design course provides learners an easy-to-understand learning course on how to build basic games using Roblox Studio. The class is completely beginner-friendly, and it doesn't matter what level of coding skill you have. In the course, you learn about creating games and the basics of coding and how to create a public game for others to play. As someone who plays a lot of games, it's really interesting to see how creators code their games and how they develop them. If you're interested in any sort of coding, game design, or anything along the lines of that, I highly recommend signing up for Algorithmic Spaghetti. The link is in the description of this video, and make sure to use code AMBER for Algo when signing up. So if you've gone to Dragonspine, you will know that there is sheer cold, which will slowly accumulate if you don't go near a heat source or any fire at all. This can be really annoying if you're trying to explore and fight enemies, so having the meal called goulash on hand can be really helpful. So the way to obtain a recipe is through going through the quest, which is called fresh meat. I believe the quest starts around over here, where you just have to go and collect some frozen meat from the boars all around the area, and that's also where you unlock the snowboar king, which is the next thing I'd like to mention. Once you've obtained the goulash recipe, you can craft it and it'll decrease the rate of sheer cold accumulation for your party. This can be extremely helpful if you're trying to complete some dragonspine quests that are difficult and there's no heat sources, so you might want to go ahead and try to obtain this one and find the quest. So the next thing is the snowboar king, which you will find in the area right here along with the frozen boars. So the snowboar king, once you go in this area and you melt all of these boars, the snowboar king will start attacking you from around here. So you might want to bring a character with a shield because the attacks of the snowboar king are really strong. And also there are no heat sources near the area, so you might want to make some goulash. So for this boss, you would not need to use any resin for it, which is pretty good, but the cooldown is a little bit long. But what the boss will drop are some chilled meats, which you can use to create regular raw meat and thaw them out. This boss is pretty fun, especially if you're just a late game player who's looking for something to do. Maybe some people might have forgotten about Dragonspine, which is okay. If you're looking for some chilled meat or if you need to cook any dishes, you can come over here and the snowboar king will be waiting for you. The next tip can be really helpful to all players because it is related to the NPCs around the area that sell some ascension materials. Over here during the daytime, there will be an NPC named Flora who will sell you a few flowers if you're willing to ascend your characters, like small lamp grass, windwheel asters, cecilias, etc, etc. Now another NPC that some people might know a little bit less about is the one traveling along this road near Windrise. Her name is Chloris, and you can find things like wolf oaks or valberries, so make sure to go check that out in this area if you're looking for essential materials and your world has not resetted yet. But just know that this is here and you can just pay a little bit of mora to receive a few essential materials, so collect them while it's still early on so you're not having to scavenge for them later when the time comes to ascend. Now I know this next tip might seem very oddly specific, so what you're going to want to do is teleport to this waypoint right here at the edge of Wangshu Inn near Dihuang Marsh area, and this location right here is where I'm trying to lead you to. If you might know already about this location, then that's great, but if you don't, here's what it actually has. So this is the area where you find it. Now there is a little bush of grass here, but don't worry because you can walk right through it, or if you want to break the grass down. But if you break these wards, there are going to be a lot of investigation spots around here where you can get some artifact EXP. So after investigating this little spot, you can get 1-star and 2-star artifacts, which are really good because if you need to level up an artifact and don't have any XP, then here is the best place to go to. Now there are other places around the map, but I prefer this location because this is where you can get some of the most artifact XP without having to do much work. All you need to do is teleport to that location, and there you go, you have some XP. I think there's a Geoculus over here. I would have to double check. Once again, this is the location, and you can just teleport to this waypoint here, or if you want to put a portable waypoint, that's fine too. But just so you know, this is an artifact XP location, and I would highly recommend going to it. Now for this next tip, it might seem a little strange too, but I would just like to note the use of condensed resin. Condensed resin helps if you are going to be gone for a little while and you want to use your resin without having to spend it and do the domains. You can use 40 resin to make 1 condensed resin and use this to get better rewards for domains. They also work on ley lines, but you can only have 5 at a time. Now, the reason why I craft condensed resin is mainly for if I'm doing artifact domains or if I'm going to not be playing Genshin for that day specifically. The reason why I recommend condensed resin for artifact domains is because artifact domains have harder level enemies to fight and they take a little bit more time if your characters aren't really that well built. So using condensed resin will help the process a lot better, and also you have the chance of getting 3 artifacts in a single condensed resin run, but normally the amount is 2. You will save a lot of time if you just use condensed resin instead of normal resin. I made this mistake when I was farming for Noblesse Oblige, and I know the domain is so annoying, so crafting condensed resin for artifact use is extremely helpful. But I wouldn't use condensed resin on things like ley lines unless you're really trying to get a certain thing in a ley line, like more XP books and more Mora. The next thing I would recommend is raising a weapon before a character. Now the weapon is where a lot of your damage comes from, especially if your artifacts aren't built up, but the thing what I like about weapons is that they are guaranteed a boost in damage, while spending your resin and resources on artifacts is basically like a game of chance. You don't know if you're going to get a good artifact or not, but if you just raise your weapon, you know for 100% you are getting an increase in damage. So go ahead, invest your resources in the weapons before you raise your characters or anything else on your character. That's why even before I obtain a character, I like to raise a weapon specifically for them. Like I raised Favonia's sword a lot earlier, and also I have replacement weapons for characters I might get in the future. But if you are trying to pre-farm for a character, pre-farming for their weapon is the best option, because if you don't end up getting that character and maybe you lose the 50-50, you can use this weapon on someone else and you won't be wasting your resources. But if you get a specific artifact set or if you get a specific talent book, you are technically wasting your resources because you can't use these resources on other characters because they're more specific towards that character. So it's always important, raise your weapon before your character, or at least invest a little bit more in the weapon than raising your character or artifacts first. The next tip is really important, which is my friendship team. Now this team is labeled friendship for a reason because they are a bunch of low-level characters that I won't really get to use around the world or in domains, so I don't really have a steady method of collecting their friendship XP to get their name cards, but having a friendship team for when you collect commissions is extremely useful and it'll help you gain a little bit more XP faster. This tip isn't exactly a full tip, it is just a recommendation. So there is a gadget called the portable waypoint. If you saw my Genshin gadget tier list, you might hear a little bit about it, but it's basically a custom waypoint, so you can place a waypoint anywhere you want in the map and you can access it and it'll stay there for a week. Now some of the most annoying places to get to are around this area here and also the geohypostasis, but my recommendation is to put a waypoint right here or around this area because there are actually a lot of enemies there, and if you're using the handbook to farm, a lot of the time it will lead you to this area and it's really hard to go from here to this area or from here to this area. It just takes a long time. So if you are looking to get to this area, put a waypoint here because it will definitely benefit you. Another tip that I found useful was to collect recipes from all around the map. Now you might think, well, who has the time to collect recipes when I can just have a healer on my team? But actually, collecting recipes is pretty fun, but also you will get a little bit of benefit in the long run. A lot of the NPC stores that sell food have recipes on hand, so you can purchase them there. And every update they do add a few more recipes, but now when I go and cook some recipes, I have a lot of different choices to choose from. So I can have an attack boosting dish, a healing dish, and none of them will ever run out. Just as long as you collect the ingredients, then you will have a lot of different food options depending on which character you're planning on playing. Alright, so that will be it for the video, but I will have a part 2 coming out because there are plenty other things that players should know in Genshin, and I don't want to stop the video here because there's so many more things that are being added that I'd like to mention as well. I wish you the best of luck if you're pulling for any characters in 2.4 or upcoming characters later on. If you have a request for a video, let me know and I will try and get to that, but for now, I'll see you all in our next video.